Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. I just wanted to show why having the second boden connector would not work. There is no space. As you can see, one is actually overlapping the other if I were to attach these, so that is not going to work. So obviously that little bit of boden tube just goes into the top of the motor, or in top of the extruder right here without this in place. So I took the hot end back off because I think it's going to be easier to finish the assembly with the hot end off and the motor on first. And I was not correct about this area being occluded by the mount. As you can see, it's not a problem. You can see the gears, you can see where the filament's going to come through, where the filament's going to drop down. So if you're having any feed issues, it's easy to see what's going on back there. I followed the directions on the hot end. While I was offline, I took the opportunity to swap out with a fresh tip, do a thorough cleaning of the inside of the hot end. Now, just some tips on doing that. I've tried the cold pulled method. I've tried a variety of cleaning methods when I've had clogs, and I've found some alternate ways of doing it. One of the things I'll do is I'll take some cotton twine, and let me just move this down here. I'll take the tip off, and the 0.4 or 0.4 millimeter tips are so inexpensive, the brass ones at least, that I frequently have tossed these out when I get a clog as to trying to clean them, because once they've got melted plastic deep down in them, it's almost worthless to try to clean them. But the heat tube is, the hot end is what's important, that this be cleaned and that this be cleaned. I've even sometimes just trimmed a little bit off the end of the boden tube. When I first cut these, I cut them a little long. This is also aftermarket tubing. But I'll take the cotton thread when I have the hot end tip off, and I'll use I'll turn the unit on, and I'll go into prepare, and I'll preheat for ABS, which is the hottest setting. And I'll take the cotton thread and I'll slide the screwdriver into the tip of it like this, and then slide that in from below and rotate it a few times, and then pull the screwdriver out and then pull the cotton thread out. And the cotton thread brings a lot of plastic with it, even after I've already tried a hot pull. Also over-the-counter pipe cleaners, and I really got it clean this time. I used some of these good old, this one's got glue on it from a previous mix-up of epoxy, but I'll take a clean one. These are just bamboo skewers, and use this to probe around the threads, use the tip to go around the threads and the beginning of the heat tube, put it all the way in and spool it around, twist it like so, to pick up a lot of plastic residue that wasn't coming out with any of the other methods. In fact, I got some fairly big chunks. At one point, a piece of black filament came out, and I hadn't run black through here in probably 3 different color changes back, and I got a nice piece that was shaped like a third of a tube, like it was just glued to the wall, about this long, and that came out by probing around. Now there's always the possibility of damaging the inside of this. The pitot tube goes most of the way down into this unit anyway, And I don't think that when you consider that some of the filaments used, like carbon filaments and stuff, can score up the inside here, I don't think that's really a problem. The main thing is the tip, and that's swappable. And even these units are not that expensive to replace. So I think it's more important, not to be wasting tons of time and tons of filament with clogs, worried about, not scratching the inside of this by not getting it thoroughly cleaned. So I think I'll have less clogs than I've had recently for the amount of cleaning I just did on this, and hopefully that will be the case. In any event, that's just some things I do to get my hot end as clean as possible. So I have cut this to the size they recommended, and they say that is for stock, and I test fitted and was about 3 millimeters shy. So I trimmed it a little bit at a time until, by inserting it there, I'm right about at the screws, so that should be perfect. A lot of little things like this are kind of, left to you to set up properly. And they only provided enough of this for one stab at it, so don't cut short and then find out you're too short. I mean, you could always use some of your old pitot tubing, which you probably have, but better to do it right and use that nice fresh tubing from the get-go. So the only other thing that kind of concerns me about this is the fact that since we're not using a boden connector, there's room for this to move around, and it may not stay centered on the hole, so feeding filament in here may be tough. I'd like to find like a piece of tubing, maybe a little piece of fuel, silicone fuel line, something that would stretch around the tip of this, just to provide spacing on the hole where the boden connector normally would be, just to help keep this little piece of pitot tube centered. If it becomes a problem feeding filament and getting it to start down into this, I'll make note of that. I'll do another video on whatever my solution is, and I'll definitely do follow-up videos on this just to let you know how it's performing. I'm going to do some initial tests, which will be included in this video, but how this works long term is going to be another story. So if it's worth telling, I'll definitely do that. And this Allen wrench is definitely getting to the point where I just need to cut that little ball tip off. It's not good. All in all, this looks like a great kit. All the hardware is good. All the parts match up to stock just fine. I am looking for that. And notice that I took off that that tape that I had put on here. That was not stock. I may put some of it on again later. I'm thinking about swapping the hot end out at some point with an aftermarket hot end. At least that was my thinking, because I was just having so many damn clogs, and I'm really glad that I did a much more aggressive cleaning this time, and went beyond just that cold pull method and really got in there, because getting out all that black filament that was so far gone, so many other colors that I had run, and to see that all that black coming out after I had already made multiple cleaning attempts was really surprising. So make sure that you clean aggressively if you start getting clogs, and also make sure to I'm sorry, got distracted. Make sure to not worry about damaging the hot end. What you want to do is, when you're working with this, you want to be careful about damaging this connection here, and you want to not damage, when you're cleaning, try to hold this like with a wrench. That's what I did. I just clamped it in a crescent wrench and just kept my thumb you know, on the roller to keep it snug against it. I didn't want to score it up with something like the teeth of a pair of pliers that might mar it, but I wanted to hold it firmly at the same time. These two little screws can be hard to get started. That seems to be the best way to do it, I've found, is preferably have a long wrench, and that's going to be really hard to use the stock wrenches with this setup, because, let me just move the camera for you. As you can see, there's not a lot of room to get one of those little L wrenches in there. So if you are assembling this kit, get yourself a set of longer wrenches, or as I've mentioned in a previous video, these wrenches, I used to race mountain bikes and race triathlons, and I used to work on bicycles. In fact, I was a bicycle mechanic when I was younger, worked at a couple of shops over the years, and so I had purchased these wrenches some time ago, and they're very nice. I've actually got two different sets that are similar. Good tools is just something you don't give up. When I had to stop racing because of my back injuries, I sold all the nice carbon fiber bikes, but I kept most of my tools. As you can see, I just trimmed that little ball end off. It was really becoming a pain in the neck. Those tend to wear, and these aren't exactly new. So now I get a nice clean bite, no slippage, and I'm not going to damage the screws. There we go. So that's one of the advantages of having a Dremel. Dremel is God's gift. I've had many of them over the years. This is a nice tool for cutting the boden tubing and getting it square, but the white tubing that came with had a bit of a curve to it. I'm sure it came off a large spool, and I was having a hard time getting a right angle cut, so I just went to the trusty X-Acto knife and did it carefully and got nice square ends. So if you don't have these, use a very sharp blade. Don't try to cut it with some type of scissors or nippers. You've probably heard this before. You'll find it in many sets of instructions on dealing with the boden tubes. Having that flush surface, especially at the bottom here, that's inside the heat tube, that if it's not lined up properly, that allows hot plastic to seep out around the edge. It can even go up around the edge of the boden tube, and then you've got the makings of clogs. So just food for thought. Do things right, do it right the first time, and you have less problems down the road. Okay, on with the assembly. So here is our handy dandy extension cord, and one end is going to plug in right here into our motor. Make sure that's completely in, and as long as I am at this point, I'm going to add this light kit, which I bought at the same time. Should be easy enough to do. What this does is it's a little strip of LEDs, and it's gonna two-sided tape on the bottom here, and then this nice little no solder connector. I'm going to find a positive and negative wire, and positive is clearly marked, and you just snap that down, and that's going to clip in through the insulation and make contact, and there will be light down here near the tip, which will be nice. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this right now so I can get at this cabling. And I may even, now we want to cover this cable. This is going to get bundled in and probably routed over here. This cable will probably just continue to route the way it is. I'm not sure I want to use this this blue plastic tubing that comes with the kit. I think I have some of this material. I'm gonna look in one of my boxes and see what I can find. I'll be right back. So as you can see, I did have some of that web left over from a gaming PC build. Okay, so I have pulled back this shrouding here, and here are the positive and negative wires for the fan. Now, you don't want to connect to the positive neg wires for this fan, because that is speed controlled by the system. You want to connect to this one, which is always on. Okay, and as we can see, positive, negative, so these wires are going to basically just lay in here. This will be easier if I just pull off, separate a little more of this. I want to be reasonably close to the fan or to the connection here, because there's only so much slack they give you here. So try to connect close, because there's just enough material to put this right here, and then this has to be right there. And you just snap this closed with a pair of pliers. I would make sure you get a good squeeze in the middle of it. Make sure that you're cutting through. Also confirm above and below that the wires are in the right place. Do that before you snap this down. You can probably put a very small straighted screwdriver in under that tab and pop this open if you need to, but definitely try to get it right the first time. And we can just give this a quick test by turning on the system, and we have lights. So now I can peel off the one side of the sticky material there and put these in place. Let's see, there we go. There we go. So now I can slide that cover back down, and I'll zip tie that in place. Just power it up again just to confirm. So as you can see, got a nice little bit of light down there. It helps see what's going on underneath. So one of the connections is under here. So we need to pull this sticker off. And this is where we are going to mount one of these. Just reviewing the instructions real quick. Yeah, okay. So this basically provides anchor points, and that goes here. And that's what 2 of these long screws are for. So, my wrench. Good size. There we go. I was wondering what these extra large ones were for. Huh. That's interesting. Okay, I need Phillips head for that. Okay, and that is to zip tie the cable here, so we don't have to worry about strain issues. I would make sure to leave a little bit of a extra bit down here. Don't try to save as much cable as possible and pull this tight, because you're just creating a strain issue. Okay, and our other piece goes right there. Interesting that they give us this double-sided one. I'm going to go ahead and anchor this webbing material like I did over here. And let's just move this all the way to the extent. Let's see. Yeah, it's never going to come over that far, but it's possible mechanically. Sorry, just muttering to myself. You know what? I don't think I'm going to use that connection there at all. I'm going to unplug this, and I'm going to let this follow this cord. I'm also not going to use that. I think that just wastes cable. If this is, I'll just pull back here so you can see what I'm doing and fully understand. Okay. We've already got this batch of cabling right here, and I'm going to go ahead and get that zip tie going there. I'm replacing the one that I cut earlier so I could get to those wires for the fan. I think what I'm going to do is just zip tie this to this in a couple places, just like the boden tube was attached. And connect this over here. So motor connection is attached. And in theory, I could attach both of these here like this, leave them enough room to move forward and back, and then they already have enough slack for going up and down, and that might be a good way to go. But for the time being, I think I'm just going to attach the two of them together with a couple of zip ties and let this one bear this one as far as any strain relief goes. And that should work just fine. So that one is nice and loose. There's no issue of having strain issues there. I don't really think using either of these two is necessary at all, at least not on this particular model. And I'll go ahead and spin this around and show you why. Okay. See, we have our motor cable here. Now, this can be split even further down, just like that. So, in theory, that could go all the way to the very bottom. So there's no reason not to just group these up like this. And then just let this one here do its thing all by itself to run that one motor. See? So this can rise and fall with this. I might at some point use a cable track, but nothing I need to worry about doing right this minute. I'm just going to throw a couple more on here. Go ahead and add one more down here and then trim off the excess. Now I have, thanks to this little guy here, I've had zero issues with cables catching anywhere. That's why I haven't already done the cable track. It just hasn't seemed necessary. I mean, I suppose it's a nice thing to have. It just really seems unnecessary. This is just going to be fine where it is. There's been no problems so far. The gantry can go all the way up without any issues. It's at its furthest extent here. Going all the way over here. It's not in danger of catching on anything. It can go all the way down, and again, no problems. So I think that's better than routing a separate cable across to one side. Just going to go ahead and leave these little guys here, these two plastic anchors. I may just take them off and replace them with the plastic. I'll just give this a try and make sure I don't have any issues. We'll see how that goes. If there are problems, if I want to revisit that, no problem. One thing I could do is provide some type of springy anchor from up here, like mount a bar that comes out here with a piece of bungee and a metal ring, so that this can slide, the wires can slide through and yet be able to rise and fall but be kept out of the way. I think that's overkill though. So now I got to test first run and we'll see how that goes. I think what I'm going to do right now chatting with you. Let's see how easily this loads up filament. So I'm just cutting an angle into a piece of filament here, and I'm gonna pop the wheel on here. Okay, and let's see how this feeds down. Now, let's see. Okay, just gonna mark this with a magic marker so I know when I've gone far enough that I should be at the bottom or close to it, at the very least far enough that you know, everything is going the way it should. Okay, I'm through the first, I'm into the plastic tubing, and I'm all the way down bottom of the pitot tube to the hot end. So, easy enough. Didn't have any problem getting into the pitot tube as I was worried about. You know, that may move, that may become an issue down the road, but we'll see. For now, it's not a problem. So I'm gonna go ahead and last step here, tightening the grub screw on this wheel here. So that is anchored back in place. Okay, so ready to test. This is the first print with the new setup and the direct drive modification. It works great, and it is on its way to print something else. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.